Yo, we ready to get right into it. Thank y'all for joining in. Let's get right to this one, guys. Here we go.
Now, the indelible hype for Avengers Doomsday is starting to build the same way it did for Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, and it's all rooted in this idea that a lot of these characters we're about to see on screen, most of which who have not met each other before, are ultimately going to come together to fight side by side and try to bring down Doctor Doom. And with this first round of casting announcements, including X-Men characters like Cyclops and Beast, you can already tell that Marvel Studios is really going for it as far as the number of characters we're going to have in just Avengers Doomsday, let alone Secret Wars. You add Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom to all of that, a brand new character we haven't seen in the MCU, it's almost as if you forget that there could be other characters like they introduced during Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, some of which we've never seen before. That's where we pick up with today's extremely exciting update, and coming from a trusted industry insider source, that Marvel Studios is planning to introduce brand new characters here at the end of the multiverse saga. We're going to break down exactly where this came from and what they said, and then try to add some context to it, exactly which characters he may be referring to because of just how important they are to the Secret Wars storyline. We're breaking it all down, new characters joining the MCU in the next two Avengers films, but first, if you could grab the subscribe button. Again, thank you to everyone who's been subscribing recently, guys. We are growing at an insane pace. If you haven't already, I just kindly invite you to do so. It is the number one thing you can do to support us here at the channel as content creators, plus it enters you for the giveaways if you want. Stick around to the end of the video. We get into all the giveaway stuff again there. Okay, so this latest scoop comes from Cryptic HD Quality. You guys can follow him over on Twitter at Cryptic4KQual. He's been around in the community for about 3 or 4 years and has almost an impeccable track record. He started with calling when trailers were going to be dropped, descriptions, and even posting some early TV spots himself. And since then, again, he has been extremely ubiquitous and extremely accurate with his information, so take that as you will. This was his latest update for Avengers Doomsday and Secret Wars. Quote, "I hear they will introduce a few one-off heroes and villains we've never seen for both Doomsday and Secret Wars. You'll probably never see them again on the big screen after the saga ends." He also went on to add the clarification, quote, "When I say never seen before, I don't mean original characters. They're not making up people out of nowhere, characters that already exist but have never been seen before on the silver screen." So he's not referring to characters like What If when they've gone ahead and forged new ones. He's just saying there's a lot of Marvel characters out there and we're going to get to see some one-offs. Now, looking back in Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, Marvel Studios and the Russos decided to do this, but very judiciously. They only included characters they needed for specific parts of the story, like Thanos in his Black Order gave the Avengers people to fight against in the early parts, Act 1 and Act 2, that weren't Thanos. So they definitely served an important role in the story, and of course Eitri when Thor needed to forge his axe. But where they could have put any character on Vormir, literally any celestial being guarding the Soul Stone, they decided to make it the end of Red Skull's storyline. So they didn't just go to that well and want to include any old Marvel character, and we know there were some early ideas about Doctor Strange talking to the Living Tribunal. They decided to go away from that. However, this is Avengers Secret Wars, and there are some major characters they could use for this saga that are super important for Secret Wars that we don't already have in the MCU, and would also fit the qualification that we probably wouldn't see them again after this. The first one I'm referring to is very obviously the Beyonder. Remember, the Russos just said that they of course grew up on the 1980s Secret Wars run and will be drawing from both that and the 2015 Jonathan Hickman run, and in both cases the Beyonder is a major part of that storyline. Now, I theorized here at the channel why and how Marvel Studios might want to omit the Beyonder, because they've already positioned Loki as the central point of power in the multiverse, and the whole reason Doctor Doom wants the Beyonder's power in the comic books is to become God Emperor Doom, seize his power, and remake the world as he sees fit into Battleworld. You could do this by him simply taking Loki's place at the center of the multiverse. They've put a lot of setup into that. We have no Beyonder. It is a lot of explainer. It is a lot of film to try to involve that character. So on one side of the coin, it seems impossible to involve the Beyonder in this late, find a reason and a place for him in the story, and also introduce Doctor Doom, all these X-Men, etc. On the other side of the coin, he's always been a central part of the story, again, both in the 1980s and in 2015, and so when we hear one-off characters, immediately the Beyonders is what comes to forethought. Now, the other character side by side with this is Molecule Man, but in the comics, Molecule Man's place was basically as the Anchor Being character idea that they just introduced in Deadpool and Wolverine, with obviously the idea of using that in context for the next two Avengers films. And because we know, at least from Deadpool and Wolverine, that Wolverine was one of the Anchor Beings across the multiverse, very likely they're going to stay away from Molecule Man. Again, these characters have immensely consequential abilities, and they require a ton of explainer and context to put them in place. And since Marvel didn't do that with the Fantastic Four, at least we don't think they're going to, etc., it would be much easier for Marvel to use the chess pieces they've got on the board, like replace the Beyonder with Loki, and then replace Anchor Beings that are already superheroes we have, instead of introducing Molecule Man. That's my take. Now, this leaves the door open for less consequential characters, some of which I have been calling for so long, say like Beta Ray Bill. Remember, Beta Ray Bill is a Corbinite, and the Rousseau specifically went to their planet and during Avengers Endgame for that flashback scene between Gamora and Nebula. We also know that there were ideas of having Beta Ray Bill CGI as a part of Ragnarok, and instead he just became a statue on the side of the Champions Tower. So Beta Ray Bill first and foremost, and just as a fan, and then characters like him, because using this logic, these are characters that Beta Ray Bill looks and acts like Thor. Maybe he'll be a part of the Thor Corps, but you don't have to spend a lot of time explaining who it is. Conversely, if they were to include the character like Eternity that we saw in Thor Love and Thunder, then that is a massive, massive consequential character. There has to be some exposition, some dialogue explaining his whole role or what he's doing, unless they make it clearly evident through on-screen action. Again, that just requires a lot of time. So it's going to be really interesting to see who these one-off characters are that Marvel Studios decides to visit during the Secret Wars saga and then never again. You guys let me know all your thoughts down below, though. If you had your pick of a second tier, or third tier, even fourth tier character that we might not see again but could be utilized in Secret Wars, especially during the final battle, who you got? I'm all ears as always. Quickly, let's get into the giveaway stuff before I let you go. All right, we are still giving away PlayStation 5s at the channel.
Don't nobody want no goddamn PlayStation 5. We're getting out of here.